stop it bailing out these agencies, which means veto the bills where the Congress tries to bail out the special interests, as well as curtail what the Fed can do in the best and most rapid manner possible, put them to get out of the business of taking care of their cronies. And this would be a really very strong message. But there has to be a lot of spending cuts as well. And I'm going to be proposing in detail a cut in spending of $1 trillion. You know, we're $1.5 trillion in deficit. And all this talk about cutting in the future and tinkering on the edges and cutting future increase, it means nothing, and the American people know it. So we need cuts this time, so I would propose the cuts that we need to do. I would guarantee that we would not be abusing the civil liberties of individuals. I would bring the troops home, let those military personnel come back here and start spending their money right here at home, which would be an economic stimulus. So there's a lot the president can do, but also working with the Congress is key. And this is where I think a philosophy that I'm talking about brings people together, not by two sides sacrificing their beliefs, but I work quite well with progressive and liberal Democrats. We had coalitions who are trying to prevent the wars. We still exist and talk to each other, trying to get us out of these wars. And progressive and liberal Democrats are more attuned to trying to protect personal civil liberties, and at the same time bringing people together and realizing that we do have to cut spending. So it is a major task. There is no doubt about it, but I believe that program I'm talking about has a much better chance of solving our problems than to continue with the status quo.
Okay, so a couple of follow-up questions, since you're at the National Press Club and we like to keep our reputation. Why can't you outline what the spending cuts are today? And if you're going to bring all the soldiers home, we've got 14 million unemployed people in the United States right now. Yes, we'd like for them to be great consumers, but where are they going to find jobs? The first thing you bring them home, you don't put them out on the street. So that they just spend their money here at home. But if you want to look at a good example historically and economically, look at what we did after World War II. I think there were like 5 or 6 million people. They just got out of the military and they came home and they slashed the military. They didn't stimulate the economy. They slashed the military budget like 60% and cut taxes 30%. And we finally went back to work again. So I wouldn't be frightened by that. If you understand the market, you don't have to be concerned about it. But as far as indicating the cuts, I can talk in broad categories, and I'll be glad to do that, but I want to design a program where you can even see it on the line item. But ultimately, and also in the introduction, this is not a criticism, but it frequently happens about when we talk about the defense budget. I don't want to cut defense. I want to cut the military. Eisenhower tried to teach us something about the military-industrial complex, building weapons that we don't use and fighting wars we don't have any business being in. So we're not cutting defense there, and I described a little bit about the foreign policy. We have less defense because of that. I mean, our Coast Guard is over in the Persian Gulf. Where do you think our National Guards are when we want to use them to help rescue operations when natural disasters hit? They're over in Afghanistan. So I would say, yes, you can cut a lot. You can cut hundreds of billions of dollars out of the military budget. You can cut programs that have no constitutional authority. Where does the authority come to have a Department of Energy or a Department of Education, a Department of Commerce, a department to pass out subsidies to farmers? I mean, will they not exist if we have free markets and sound money? I mean, we have to understand how the markets work. We have to have confidence how the market works and how freedom works. But the cuts can be there, and hopefully in due time, the specifics will be there, and you can look at every line item which we're going to cut. But you could slash the budget probably by 70% if you said, anything that is not authorized directly by the Constitution no longer can be paid for. I mean, it is this total lack of respect for the Constitution, whether it's going to war or reinstitutionalizing prohibition without a constitutional amendment. All these kind of things, we have just gone so far from what was originally intended by the founders of this country. So just to follow up then, when would you have specific ideas about where to cut? When would you have those specifics?
A couple weeks, I believe. But I'm probably more specific than others. You know, if I want to get rid of the Department of Education, Department of Energy, Department of Commerce, Department of Agriculture, and cut the military budget in half, that's a pretty good start, and that's pretty specific.
So you talk quite a bit in your, and you can stay up here if you want. Otherwise, we're not going to get any more questions in. You talk quite a bit in your speech about the protests now occurring on Wall Street. What do you see as your areas of agreement with those people? And as president, what would you do to ameliorate their concerns, since they seem to be very upset primarily with quote-unquote big business and the banks?
Right, and I can't speak for the people out there because I don't know who they are and exactly what they're demonstrating against. I can argue the case for their right to express their outright frustration with what is going on. Some are liberals and some are conservatives and some are libertarians and some are strict constitutionalists. And if you read carefully a lot of what I've written on economic policy over the last 10, 15 years, I talk a lot about this, that eventually we will go bankrupt. Eventually we will undermine our productivity. We've had no new jobs in the past 10 years, yet we've had 30 million increase in our population. That eventually our jobs would go overseas and the pie would shrink, and there would be an aggressive attitude to get a piece of the pie that's no longer there. And this is what we're seeing. So you will have a mixture up there. But as far as the federal government involved in the practice of civil disobedience in the various states, it's really up to the states to deal with it. I think civil disobedience, if everybody knows exactly what they're doing, is a legitimate effort. It's been done in this country for many grievances, and some people end up going to jail for this. But to speak for a special group and say, yeah, I like what they're doing or they're not doing, but what I want to do is try to sort it out and tell people why they're struggling and that this was a predictable event. And the solution is really getting a healthy economy back. And you can't get a healthy economy until you deal with the many things I've just got done saying.
You've retained, this is a question from the audience, you've retained a solid block of the Republican vote in the polls. What do you need to do to push into the top tier of the Republican field, and what do you plan to do?
I personally plan to do exactly what I've been doing for 35 years, and that is talking about the philosophy of liberty, and now it's more appropriate because people need something and they don't like what they have. I'll continue to do that, but we're going to continue to run a very well-run campaign. We're raising enough money. We're not competing, of course, with people who can wave a wand and get money from the big donors. But we're going to continue to do the same. But really, the litmus test is the primaries. We have to prove ourselves in the early primaries, and that's where we're very encouraged.
So are you focusing your attention on the early part of the process?
Oh, yes. I spend more time in Iowa and New Hampshire, no doubt.
One interesting dynamic of this campaign, which seems a little unique, is not only the shift in leadership in the polls through the process so far, in the sense that one person seems to lead 1 month and then may fall to the middle part of the pack after that. The other part is the seeming yearning for someone else to jump into the campaign, and the headlines of the past 24 hours focusing on Chris Christie. How do you explain this yearning, which some voters seem to be engaged in, to see someone else jump in? Does that say anything about the quality of the people who are currently running?
No, I think it represents the failure of the system, and what is offered up is the status quo. The candidates, I think, that I am up against represent a very much of a status quo, Keynesian spending, militarism, and it doesn't answer the questions. It doesn't even ask the right questions. It doesn't ask the right questions about what liberty is all about and what about the Federal Reserve and change in the foreign policies. Those questions aren't being asked. And I think that is and they keep looking for others. But quite frankly, I have an uphill battle. For instance, I imagine that everybody in this room, I'll bet, knows who won the straw vote in Florida. I want to see a hand up if you don't know who won the straw vote in Florida. Everybody knows. Does anybody know who won the straw vote in California? There, one person. It just happens that yours truly won the straw vote in California, and but it's a non-event. It was a non-event, so I have an uphill battle, and it was well documented. Matter of fact, the documentation of the total ignoring of me coming in tied for first place, essentially in the Ames straw vote. We at least were able to turn around that the exclusion of me being tied for first place became an issue, and I think we did quite well. I don't lie awake at night worrying about this, because that's part of the way the system works, but it also explains why, if there is somebody out there offering something different and something American people like, we have to compensate for our ability to get the message out. Where I feel good, if I go to the university campus and get 1,500 young people out, they've gotten the message, because they don't depend on the conventional method of getting their news, and they use the internet. They know what's going on, and they are giving me a lot of encouragement.
So is that to say that you have a problem with the way the news media is treating your campaign?
No, I just accept it because that's the way it's been. All politicians have a problem to a degree. Yes, I would say that if you want to see an explanation of it, look at Jon Stewart. He demonstrated it rather dramatically, exactly what was going on. And yes, it makes a big difference. So, but I think that if we're worth our salt, and we can raise the money, and we can communicate, I would say, for the most part, I really get a pretty fair shake. But sometimes when it's, this whole thing, I'm really not the right person to ask is why these things happen, because I don't have any idea. I think people should be asked why some things news and other things aren't. And it's a fact of life.
Questioner says that you have raised more money than many other Republican presidential candidates. You have legions of small donors and passionate supporters. Why hasn't that translated into a better boost at the polls, and last time around into votes in the primaries as well?
Well, it's a different world compared to 4 years ago, so we can't hardly even talk about it, because the fundraising is easier, the support is much greater, the organization is much more organized, much more professional, and our polls do not discourage us, both in New Hampshire and in Iowa, and that will be the litmus test. You have to finally do well in the polls. You have to overcome all the obstacles of getting the message out and raising the money and getting the organization in. So but as far as progress is concerned, I'm pretty satisfied with the way we've made progress.
So obviously you brought up the issue of fundraising in your speech, and that you're feeling good about that. The questioner asked, what kind of a boost do you think Governor Perry will get from his announcement that he raised $17 million for the campaign, and would he be regarded as the front runner?
Maybe, but if you get $8 million, half as much, and you get it from small individual donors who are fervently engaged in campaigning for you, that's a lot different than getting money that more likely might have come for the other candidates from the special interests. I don't get that type of money. I've been on financial services, for all these years, but bankers don't come and donate me any money. I wonder why. Because they know where I stand. So, no, I think it's much different. So, all donors are not equal. I will take my smaller donations with the enthusiasm of the people who send me the money.
Well, since you raised the issue of raising money, and obviously you're reliant on that in the system in which you toil, how do you feel about the way that the system now works, in the sense that fundraising is such an important part of it? You have the Supreme Court giving a certain amount of power to corporations that was not given to them in the past. Does that make it more difficult for a candidate like you that isn't working through the system the same way as other candidates might?
Probably, but I don't know how important it is. The president says he'll raise $1 billion. So that money's big stuff. But there's a limit. I look at it on the more positive side. There's been some very wealthy individuals who self-financed, and they may win, but they might not get reelected, and sometimes they don't win. So money isn't the only issue. So I think that the funds are obviously very important, but I don't think this is an invitation to say that we have to limit this. I believe in freedom of people to spend their money. The problem isn't, a lot of people say it's the money that's driving it. No, it's the power in the government to control our lives and the economy and pass out favors. And besides, if you have individuals that might resist the temptation to accept it, they don't donate my money to me, and the lobbyists don't even come to see me. And that's quite a bit different. So I don't think money is pretty darn important, but I don't think it's the final answer. And of course, we have to prove ourselves.
So we have a student from the University of Tampa who asked the question, why is it, and obviously we're assuming he's right by posing the question, or he is, why is it that you receive more donations from military members than any other candidate? Is that true, first of all?
That is absolutely true. And I did mention it in the talk. I said that I got, I think I did, I got twice, we don't know about this quarter, but so far, I've gotten more than twice as much money from active military duty than all the other Republican candidates put together. So it should be a message. Also, more than Obama got. He's the commander-in-chief. But it tells me one thing. The young people, the military people, they're sick and tired of the war. They want to come home. That's the message I'm getting every single day. Those numbers are growing of the fruitlessness of this war. And it is up to us, the people, to look at this as a moral issue and a constitutional issue. If we looked at this as a moral issue, a monetary issue, and a constitutional issue, we wouldn't have lost one soldier over there. And it's just endless. It's on and on and on. And it's because we break the rules. If we were more restrained, matter of fact, before we went into Iraq, on international relations, I made them vote on a declaration of war. I said, I'm not going to vote for this, but if you want to go to war, you go to war and vote for it. Be up front. Well, no, we don't want to do this. We want to just give the president the authority and make up his own mind. And that, of course, is the example of the loss of the Republic and delivering one of the reasons we fought our revolution and why the founders explicitly said the president can't go to war this way. And look at where we've been. Look at where we've been. I was in the military for 5 years during the 1960s. And that war wasn't declared. Korea wasn't declared. We don't even care about national sovereignty. We go to war under the UN banner and NATO, and now the president doesn't even tell us. He goes and starts another war in Libya, and he doesn't even mention it to us, and we have to dig it out. And what is so discouraging is the lackadaisical attitude about the people. But that is what I'm hoping to change, and quite frankly, I think we are changing that. I think there are some polls that show now that a definite majority of the American people say enough is enough, it's time to come home.
So and along those lines, you recently suggested that the killing of the suspected terrorist in Yemen could be an impeachable offense. And this is after, I believe, you seemed to agree earlier with the suggestion that U.S. military involvement in Libya was also along those lines. If that's indeed the case, and you're saying the American people should have the courage of their convictions that they may or may not have, why not then go ahead and draw up the articles of impeachment?
Well, I'd have to do it for every president I've ever seen around here because they haven't followed the Constitution, and it's a practical matter. I mean, there's not going to be an endorsement. Nothing's going to happen. And they asked me whether that was an impeachable offense, and it is. I mean, just ignoring the Fifth Amendment and assassinating American citizens without due process, and won't even tell us what the rules are. Oh, but he's a threat. Can you imagine being put on a list because you're a threat? What's going to happen when they come to the media? What if the media becomes a threat? Or a professor becomes a threat? Someday that could well happen. This is the way it works. It's incrementalism. Oh, fear-mongering. This never would happen in America.
It's slipping and sliding, let me tell you. So I would say that we shouldn't do this with totally ignoring this. We better pay attention to it.
But I'm not sure you answered the question other than to say you would have had to do it for every president. If indeed you believe that's the case, why not go ahead and press the case?
I don't think it accomplishes anything because the sentiment is not there. So I don't think that would, be achievable. I think it's more important that we educate the people to understand how offensive it is. And if there is a consensus, then that will come along. And I'd probably have a coalition of people that would agree with that. A lot of people now are having second thoughts about that assassination. But this was an announced policy in February of 2010 by Dennis Blair, and he used the word assassination. Sometimes on the media they'll say, "Oh, Ron Paul says he was assassinated." Where did he come up with that word? From Dennis Blair, who said that that is now our policy. And just think of the list we already have at the airport. You are a potential terrorist by going through the airport because they can violate all your civil liberties. And they can put you on these lists. How do you get your name off a list if you're a threat? Thousands and thousands of people are on these lists. And like I tried to demonstrate in my talk, we are not safer for it. We're broke and we're in greater danger. And this whole idea, Robert Pape is somebody I've read and studied along with Michael Schur. Schur was the CIA agent. His main job was to trail and deal with Osama bin Laden. Robert Pape, he is the expert on suicide terrorism. And he says the number one reason on every suicide terrorist attack that he has studied, the number one reason why somebody would do it is occupation. So we go into various countries. We go in, we invade a country, people get killed, and then they shoot back, and they're all terrorists. And therefore we have to expand our war to go after those who are trying to kill us because we're occupying their land. I don't know why we can't think about a foreign policy of goodwill, of treating people how you would want to be treated. The golden rule could apply. Just think of anything that we have ever done in any country of the world in the last 10 or 15 years, if any country would have ever done it to us. What if in the next 10 years we get a lot poorer and China gets a lot richer? And they start drone attacks on us? Oh yeah, there's an enemy. We got to get him. He's an enemy of the people. We can't allow that to happen. And this is what is going on today. There is a transition away from protecting personal liberties. And I want to protect these liberties. I don't want prior restraint on the media, certainly, but I don't want prior restraints on you as an individual. Why can't we apply this whole principle of prior restraint, this censorship of the media? We respect that. But we ought to do that for all individuals rather than saying, oh, he's a threat, he's a terrorist, but we don't have to tell you why we put him on the terrorist list. Well, if they have a reason, tell us. Have a trial. I mean, we tried Adolf Eichmann. I mean, the Israelis tried Eichmann, and just think of his monster. All the Nazi criminals were tried. They were taken to court and then executed. There quite a few examples like that. McVeigh is another one. Oh, everybody knew he did it. But the reason we do this is because we want to protect the rule of law for ourselves, not for the. It's sort of like you protect First Amendment rights to protect the right to say controversial things, not to talk about the weather. And that's why you have to protect the courts. Not because they're the bad people. We're not protecting it for them. We're protecting it so that it doesn't get out of hand. And it is a crucial matter.
So when you talk about the cause of terrorism being the occupation of other lands, how did that fit into what happened on 9/11?
Read Michael Schur and Robert Pape. They give you the clear...
Break it down for us for 20 seconds.
20 seconds. It is the fact that the explained reason for hitting us on 9/11 were military bases in Saudi Arabia. There was one. Like I said, 9/11 Commission conceded that.
CIA conceded that. They all said that the constant bombing and the killing of many innocent people in Iraq for over 10 years, which was challenged on TV, national TV, to Madeleine Albright, and she acknowledged, yes, probably 500,000 died, but that's the price you have to pay. And those are the reasons that they gave for doing it. And it is very real. Another good example of this is, and what he points out so clearly, is when the occupation stops, the terrorist attacks stop. Lebanon is a perfect example. We went into Lebanon in the early 80s, and we were seen as occupiers. We were attacked, and 241 of our Marines were killed by suicide terrorists. Eventually, we left soon after that. The French left and the Israelis left. There was no more suicide terrorism. It just stopped like that. And the interesting thing is, this is worth looking into, when Reagan wrote his memoirs, he said that he would never turn tail and run, but he did, because he had not realized the irrationality of the politics in that region. And he said if he had been more neutral, followed the policy of neutrality, those Marines would still be alive. And that took a lot of courage for Reagan to write that and admit the shortcomings in his foreign policy at that time.
Okay, Congressman, we're almost out of time. Before we get to the last question, a couple of housekeeping matters we like to take care of. A reminder about upcoming luncheons. On October 13th, Secretary Ray LaHood with the U.S. Department of Transportation. On October 19th, Natalie Cole will talk about the American Liver Foundation's public health initiative called Tune In to Hep C. Harvey Levin from TMZ will be here October 24th to talk about the changing landscape in entertainment coverage. And on October 31st, one of your opponents, Herman Cain, candidate for the Republican presidential nomination, will join us. He'll be followed November 3rd by Tom Brokaw and November 9th by William Shatner. Now, before we do get to the last question, we'd like to present you, Congressman, with our small thank you gift, and that is the traditional NPC coffee mug. Thank you very much for being here today. Here's our last question. Of course, your son is a U.S. Senator, and since the Senate is considered the upper chamber, how is his world on the Hill different and perhaps even better than yours?
Well, it reminds me of a little story, because the first day we were sworn in together, we were on the same TV program, and they were sort of poking a little fun at me. How do you feel that your son now is in the Senate and you're in the House? And I said, well, I've already told him, I said that if he does a real good job as a senator, that he eventually might be able to get a seat in the House of Representatives.
How about a round of applause for our guest speaker today? Thank you, Congressman. Thank you very much.